urban planners is to create an organization for affordable housing for families. People who can't buy expensive apartments, but people who have to rent. And there we have studied some examples. You see here on the top pictures, you see the port and harbor and development examples that we have. That because everything I'm presenting in you is not an experiment, is a transfer of already successfully finalized projects. So, and we can just transfer that. And when you see one of the cities up above is Vienna, that is not obviously not a famous harbor city, but is a city famous for its social peace and the stability, both of the real estate market, but both of the social life. And Vienna has a great tradition, actually that also started after a great disaster, meaning in that time in the First World War. After the First World War, Vienna started to create an organization for cheap living for families, not only we would say for the poor, but also for middle classes. And in Vienna, you have more than 30% of the households are living in rented places at very attractive price. So the result is not only, let's say, a nice philosophical one, but is a tangible one. You have one of the highest security levels in the world, and you have a social peace. And the secret is that you have this social housing not only in compact areas like the HLM in Paris, but you have it distributed and spread all over the city. So you have also elegant neighborhoods with a healthy mix of different social classes and layers. And that is also the traditional situation of the old Beirut. You had like an inspiration of young people, of artists, of families. So not only the wealthy in a ghetto. So whatever you see later is driven by that approach to create lively city with a healthy mix of different people. You see here some bullet points about the infrastructure elements which make a city attractive. And what we see for us European or Northern European urban planners, we very clearly don't find Dubai attractive. That is, it might be nice to have a super expensive apartment, but there is no urban quality. And that's what we understand and studied. And for instance, my parents, they know the old Beirut from the 60s. And they told me what kind of an interesting and bursting life it was there. And so that is what also I personally had the experience and was lucky enough to help for important developments in Munich, in Vienna, and in Berlin. And there we have another thing that I must emphasize before I go and show you the sketches and the idea. That is a completely different way of developing the cities as you have seen it. We have understood that there was an important real estate development some decades ago, and obviously this has been just planned for a certain group of people in their interest, but not for the city. The result of it is it's empty. So, and that is a mistake. And nowadays is not only city planners have improved their methods in integrating by workshops, by internet workshops, by let's say surveys, integrating the population, the civil society, the stakeholders, the academic world, all people who could contribute. So whatever you see later is for us a first concept which is flexible and has the freedom to fill it precisely in an interesting process, strongly interactive process with Beirut population. And that is leading, and in our experience, is also our most mature and most clever investors. And we have a good network all over the world. By the way, Colliers is not investing ourselves. We don't have any, let's say, major financial interest in that, because we are only consultants. We are planners and consultants, but we don't build ourselves. But our most mature clients, they know that once the population has been integrated into the development of the project, it is the most sustainable success because you always have your buildings used. You always find uses for them. And that is a very fine granularity, and it's a great effort to do that. But for instance, in like an organization or a trust, I'm going to mention that later, where you would manage that entire thing, you would have an important department which is typically called stakeholder management. And that is about integrating people, like checking the pulse of the neighbors, of the stakeholders, and the groups and pressure groups and the academic world and the civil society, which, by the way, is for us is impressive. I was also before Christmas, I was here, spent some days here, and had very interesting contacts with members of the civil society. Also, let's say, I wouldn't say down to, but up to students' initiatives to repair with their hands, to repair the damaged historic buildings. So, and also we as architects, we recognize and respect the great leadership that Lebanese architects and engineers are producing all over the world. And so we are sure that we find here engagement, expertise, and the commitment to contribute to things. And that is maybe a radical change for all the, against all the past city developments you have seen here. And also against some things that we can see as built, I would say, investment ruins, because they have been developed only for a special group of people, but not for the people themselves. Okay, so here you have our, we just did that in a compact thing, is authenticity, diversity, and quality of life. And you see on the rendering to the right side, you see one part of the development. The development consists in 3 parts. One is a park, a green land in the center of it. We call it Central Park. The other one is, we call them campus buildings. That's the buildings you see on this rendering. Is like 4, 5, or 6 stories high, 4 families, with park, with green land, with utilization, and with a let's say like a multitude of utilization. Here you see now the first layout, and you see the third part. On top of it, on the harbor, on the quays, those are bigger buildings, like also some high-rise buildings, which provide, let's say, high-quality investment. We need this investment to pay for all the other parts. In the center of it, you see the Central Park, and on the lower edge, next to the old city, you see our campus buildings. You will have some information material about that later when you leave the place. And you see also that the motorway, the bridge, has disappeared. We built that back to a conventional city avenue, like a nice street in the city, which is not dividing the city and blocking it from the harbor or the sea from the city, but is connecting it. And our buildings next to that avenue, they reflect the typical building masses of the old city. You will see later in a rendering, in a view, in a visualization, you will see that there is a gradual and harmonious flow of the development of the buildings. So those buildings next to the old city, they don't fall on them as skyscrapers, but they have the same level, the same masses. Then we have the park, and on the seashore, we have higher buildings to finance the entire thing. And there we have promenade with a high density, with nice cafes and bars. And what you see between the old quays, you see beaches. We have seen it in Barcelona. There is city beaches. Why not? The water is only 8 meters deep. And we don't need to allow ships to come in. So we can, let's say, clarify the water, purify the water, and you could be able to swim. And it's from the old city is only 7 minutes walk there. Now is blocked through that brutal, hard edge, the bridge. We don't need that. We don't need all those ramps. They all consume space like hell. And we have, you see, landscape bridges and pedestrian and bicycle bridges. Also, what you see in the major avenues there is like a line which is indicating a possible public transport. Because we see that very easily we could do an important step to Beirut, starting a tramway line connecting the bus station at the end of the motorway with the official and the old Beirut. And this could be in the middle, in the center of this avenue. So this is kind of a first idea, and please don't misunderstand it. This is not a ready plan. This is just an idea to show about the conceptual idea and the masses and the dimensions. And now it's becoming interesting. Here you see a rendering. You see to the left, you see the avenue with trees. You see in the middle, you see the Central Park. We are just looking into the Central Park. And you see on the left side, you see the housing for families with rental apartments. And to the right side, you see more conventional high-rise buildings, which create very fair and stable and good revenues for things. And you see the beaches. Also the beaches, they should be a mix of clubs, private clubs, but also public beaches. Yeah? So also there, you should have the mix of different people. That's a vivid society. Lebanon is a very mature, educated society. So why not bring people together? I mean, you can't always have everyone together, but why not have a mix of people? There it comes, the question arises, how do we gonna do it? Where do we get the money from? Because again, when we started that kind of process, the project, we felt Lebanon is all over the world. Lebanese colleagues are good business people, they're good engineers, they're good architects, they're experts. They all make good money. Why don't we try to make Lebanon independent of charity? Why don't we use that thing to create, let's say, a project for Lebanon to help themselves? And when we have behind this, there's horrible long lists with calculations about the building masses and all that. Colliers, we have our next office is in Dubai here. So we have a diligent observation of the market of the last years, also the tendencies going down. So behind that is cautious calculations. And just to sum it up, we would need about a 5 billion private investment to finance more than 1 billion social infrastructure, some technology, and to end up with a profit, with a public profit of 2.5 billion US dollars. Yeah, there is, let's say, contingencies in it because we don't see every risk there. There's risk management, and we strongly suggest to keep that profit in a public and very transparently and internationally supervised bucket, and to be very strict about distributing into 3/3. 1/3 would be the city repair, like immediate help, interim financed by European Investment Bank for the private owners of the houses. The second for the rebuild of the port. And the third for helping to create affordable housing, after the Vienna example. So that's kind of all of it. The other ones is like statistics. I don't want to bore you with all those details. Another interesting thing is we have good cooperation with one of the famous research institutes in Germany, Fraunhofer Gesellschaft. They did a calculation, what is happening if you start such an interesting and lively city quarter, a Quartier Saint-Michel. They come up with a clear calculation. We would have about 50,000 workplaces in Beirut, and near to Beirut is the side effect, the ancillary effect of the project. Plus, over 25 years, it would create more than 30 billion US dollar additional welfare. That is taxes, fees, and income for people working there in those things. And that is also on the cautious side. You see the diagrams are like every year, but this is what I'm giving you just the wrap up. This is also, I don't want to push you into that in detail. It's just the realization we could imagine that going into 3 waves, into 3 phases, which are synchronized with the development of the harbor, because we can't afford to stop the harbor operating. That must create always turnover, and we could align that in a nice way. The realization, that's an interesting part, because we have been testing with our investors, our clients. Would you like to invest into such a project in Beirut? They would say yes. However, there's 2 things. There's political risk, and we want to see exactly where our money goes. So that's why the suggestion here, you see the green fields. That would be an independent capsuled trust organization, which would be internationally supervised by honorable people who don't have any political or financial interest in the projects themselves. They are experts, but they would be the ones with also help by electronic data management to really keep the thing very transparent. And then you have on top, you have, let's say, the EUB, and you have the Federal Republic of Germany, who would enhance in the one or the other way and help to, let's say, create some security and safety for the investment. And there you see the blue arrows, there's the flow of money, and you would see that in the middle, the development company, they would create the money coming in, and that profit that would go into the trust and would be then flow also to the private owners of the houses. And so we would have, let's say, very clear interest. But obviously we can't do that without the Lebanese politics. So we have the governor as the natural, let's say, final client of it, also supervising that. And we would have also the Beirut very competent authorities for the heritage, and we would have the port authority. So, but this will be for let's say a decade or 25 years. This would be an organization kind of independent, listening to everyone, but being committed only to the project goals. And with that, we are sure to create the trust. Yeah. So that was it. That is like a quick tour. I hope I didn't bore you with too many details. To the quick tour, and yeah, then I would like to. I think the schedule is handing it back to you, and you give it to.
It's okay. Stars shine at night, but some stars shine at bright daylight. I would like to give the floor to someone who came to our offices after Beirut port explosion. And he said, what can we do? The we was meaningful for us a lot, because he was saying, what can we do? It's mean hand in hand together to raise and to help Lebanon. Your Excellency, Mr. Andreas Kendall, Ambassador of the Federal Republic of Germany to Lebanon, we are happy to listen to you.
Hello. Thank you very much. You've been listening now for almost an hour, and I'll be short with 2 or 3 thoughts. First of all, I want to thank my friend Marwan to allow us here to have this panel and this press conference. And I hope it will become a press conference and not just a lecture for you. So you have your questions ready, I hope, to my colleagues here on the right. I arrived here a week before the explosion, and I know that the explosion and the consequences of this is an open wound for everyone here in Beirut. All of you know someone who was killed in the explosion, or you were injured, or someone you know was injured. You lost some of your possessions, you had to leave your apartment, and this is still, for many of us, an open wound. There is no end of the investigation in the causes of the explosion, and I understand the frustration all of us have with this effect. There's a lot of things being done, a lot of repair being done in the port and the adjacent areas, but still you can see the destruction. And immediately after the explosion, the government resigned. There's a caretaker government since then, so there's also an open wound. But I guess all of you also have good luck stories about this. I have one. I was in Phoenicia Hotel when it happened. The hotel was destroyed, and neither me nor my family did have any scratch from this, so we were really lucky, and I really hope that some of you also have such good luck stories. What you've seen here is a private initiative, but it presents a comprehensive approach, and I think it's the first comprehensive approach to a serious redevelopment of not just the port of Beirut, but also the surrounding areas and the areas of old Beirut that have been destroyed or nearly destroyed, so the heritage of Beirut. This project envisages to encounter all of these aspects: the port, the urban development around it, and the heritage. We have had the talks we have had in the last couple of days have shown me that everyone in Beirut is, seems to me, an expert on the port. Everyone has an opinion on it and a position, and my feeling is that the delegation I have accompanied has immensely profited from these discussions. We have had I want to mention this separately. We have had a very constructive, critical but very constructive discussion last night with the Beirut Urban Lab, which I learned a lot from about Beirut, and I'm sure that others have learned from this as well. So this is a huge project.
الاسلامي الصهيوني واستهل الاستاذ الياس سوري يعني شوف هذا الانبهار من قبل المسلمين بلبنان، ولكن شو هي الترجمه العمليه لانه بدون اي اضطراب سياسي، خصوصا انه في جهات سنيه وروسيه المانيه فرنسيه عايده على المرفأ. شو حسيتوا من المسلمين السياسيين الان السلطات والى اخره من التسويق؟
بالنسبة لهذا المرفأ للبنان، اللبنانيين الوحيدين هم المسؤولين يعملوا كل جهدهم بين الشعوب. هلا الخبرة فينا ناخذها من الأحسن ومن الأقوى. نسبيا نعرف كلنا إنه الألمان بالنسبة للخبرة السستينابيلتي، يعني ناخذ مشروع بيعيش. نعرف كلنا انه عم نحط ايدنا باحسن ناس اللي ما خذلوا لبنان ابدا، ما كان عندهم مطامع بلبنان، وهيدا الكور هن ما بيعملوا لحالهم، عم بيعملوه مع كل اوروبا، لانه مصرين يكون هالبور لاوروبا مش يكون لبلد واحد، بس مفتوح لكل الاوروبيين. هلا اجوا كثير، انا عشت مشفى البور من داي 1، ونهار صار المشفى كنا نتغدى مع سعادة السفير، وترك من انه بعدين صار الانفجار. اول ناس اتصلوا لحتى يساعدوا، اتصلوا في من المانيا وبدنا اياكم نحن كGBC تساعدونا الشركات الجايين، هن كانوا المان. اجا كثير عالم، واجوا كثير رؤساء دول، واجوا كثير وزراء وحكوا وبدنا نساوي بدنا نساوي. نحن بلشنا نشتغل على السكن، لانه الالمان معودين بس يقعد ما بقولوا بالانجليزي يديليفر. واجانا شركات واتكلنا على الشركات الخاصه لانه سريعين التحرك.
terminal
بأوروبا
Hamburg, which has
هن عم
the
يدرسوا لنا
biggest
إياه.
terminal in
وثابت
Europe.
انه شركه HPC هي
And
اللي اشتغلت
HPC
على الديزاين تبع الكونتينر
is
تيرمينال
the one
من 20 سنه.
who
دونك
prepared
بيعرفوا
the
منيح
design
بيروت وسوق
of
بيروت.
the
وما
port. This is
تنسى
why
انه نحن
they
نستورد من
know very
المانيا
well
تقريبا
Beirut.
مليار يورو
And don't
بالايام
forget
بالسنين المنيحه.
that
دونك
we
بيعرفوا
import
كمان
from
السوق
Germany
اللبناني
up to 1
صغير
billion
بس
per
فعال.
year. So they know
فمشان
that the
هيك
Lebanese market, though
اجوا
it's small,
هالشركات
it is
حطوا
quite
ايدهم
efficient and
بايدينا
important.
وعم
And
نشتغل.
that is why they offer
السوليسيون
their
عطينا
help.
هيدي اول
And
شيء
we
سوليسيون
have
بعد
started
مش سوليسيون
working. This
نهائيه.
is a draft
هيدي
solution.
مثل
It's not
مش
final.
افان بروجي قبل افان بروجي.
It's
بس
even the draft
عم
of the
ندرس
draft.
مش بس انه بنصلح بور
But
وكونتينر
our
تيرمينال
purpose
وهذا
is
اللي
not
بهمنا، لا
only
عم
to
نصلح كل شيء، عم
repair
ندرس
and
كل شيء
restore the
وعم
port,
ندرس
but
بعدين شو
everything.
شو
This
بيعيش
is why we
البور.
are studying
بيعيش
everything,
البور
and we
هو
are looking
إنه
for sustainable
كمان نخلق
solutions to
صناعات
let the seaport be
تصدر من
sustainable,
البور،
and
لانه وقت
also to
بنصدر من
create
البور
industries
رح نشغل
which will be able
الخط
to
الملاحة
export from the
بالاتجاهين،
port,
رح
and
نرخص
this
كمان
will,
كلفة هالخط.
of course, make
بقى مشان هيك
costs
ما رح
lower.
نتركها، مش قاعدين
This
عم
is
نعمل كل هالشيء
why
حتى نوقف هون
we
نعمل
are not
دعاية.
doing this
نحن
just
ماشيين
for the propaganda
بالمشروع.
and publicity. We are very
سؤال تاني
serious.
بس بليز باسل.
Another question, Basil, please go
Basil
ahead.
Aridi.
Basil
Sorry,
Aridi.
sorry.
My name is Basil Aridi.
1 second, maybe if I can just add something, what Mr. Aswa said. We are not operating the port. We are master planning the port. We are ensuring that it is operated well, designed well, and we'll open up later on tenders for all the subcontractors where anybody can participate. And also carrying out concessions. So whoever wants to have a concession, they should bid for it. We are an independent consultancy company as Colliers as well. So we don't act out of an own interest to operate the port. And I think that's very important. You don't want to, I think, have people here who come with their own interest. We are acting in the interest where we feel is the best for Lebanon. And we need to engage in that kind of dialogue. This is the concept that we follow. But we are not coming with certain interest.
تفضل بس.
Basil Aridi, Deutsche Welle, Beirut Bureau Chief. My first question for the German delegation. First of all, how can you guarantee that you will overcome all these political parties, political rulers that are corrupted? My second question for His Excellency, as I know that the German state will be the sponsor for the German private sector. So what guarantees can you give to the German private sectors regarding the current situation in Lebanon? Thank you.
Hello. Thank you very much, Basil. On your second question, German government is not, of course, we sponsor German private companies by, as I do now, sitting on this panel and promoting this idea, which is a comprehensive proposal, a comprehensive study. But this is not a state system where we pay for private companies. This is a private initiative, and at this early stage, as you heard, this is a first study. There will be, if everything works well, there will be a phase 2 with a detailed study on the sustainability of this project, and then there will be the implementation of this. At this first stage, there is no need for financial support, financial guarantees for this study. This is a proposal, and this proposal is brought to the public. This proposal is brought to the Lebanese government in order to achieve a decision that allows this group to go further into the phase 2, further into a deeper study on how this can be done. At a later stage, and I said there's a clear international consensus on the nexus, the important nexus on international support financing and the necessary economic and political reforms that need to be done, that have been agreed upon by all the former Lebanese governments. They just need to be implemented. At that stage, there will be a discussion on who is going to finance this, because it's clear that Lebanon has no financial means to do this. How this is being pre-financed, because as Professor Schnell explained, there is a model where over, and it's not unusual, over a longer period of time, there's a refinancing. So what it actually needs is a pre-financing by international institutions or by other governments. But we are not yet at this point, so this is a discussion for later. At this point, this is a presentation of a comprehensive study, a comprehensive proposal, and the next step would be that this idea is accepted by a Lebanese authority and then can be delved into deeper. Thank you.
ناخد سؤال تاني please. تفضل.
Another question, please.
Thank you. Thomas Schellen, Executive Magazine, Beirut. My first question to Mr. Aswad. How, in percentage terms, optimistic, I mean, I think you are the most optimistic representative of the German-Lebanese business connections. How optimistic are you that this vision that we have presented here will be fulfilled by 2030, 2040, or 2050? Second question to the gentleman of Hamburg Port Consulting. It's my understanding from what you just said that there will not be an intent to be involved in the operations. However, it is also my understanding that the Beirut Container Terminal Corporation right now, whose tender or whose mandate of concession has expired last year, is in a rather difficult situation of having to finance spare parts, having to maintain and operate. So do you have any solution as far as how this situation in the port can be managed until the time whenever the reconstruction and rejuvenation of the BCTC can start? Thank you.
I just insisted to call this project hope. And if there is no hope, then nothing will happen. I am sure that before 2030, we will have already a beautiful piece of the port and all around, and it should be already working. If you have the will, you will succeed. Many games, talks, but we proved you that we are working on the right track. We have cleaned the port from all hazardous material, and there, thanks to Germany and to the German companies who accepted to work before being paid yet and finish the job and relieve the risk of explosion or the risk of cancer for all the people working in the Beirut terminal. And we are working silently. And I am sure this will be realized because Germany for sure will follow us, will follow the private sector and will guarantee the project like it should be.
Mr. Lars, please.
Thank you. From a Hamburg Port Consulting point of view, just to clarify, we are port consultants, and this is essentially what we do. We assist ports globally how to optimize, how to improve not just their performance, but their materials management. We assist in doing pre-cognitive maintenance to reduce your maintenance costs, optimize the flows of cargo, looking very much at the systematization, the digitalization of these systems to make them more efficient. This is essentially what we generally do. We would not come in and take over the port. One of the first things we would do would be have a look and say, how can we optimize the port right now? How can we make it more efficient right now? At the same time, I think Ambassador Kindle has made it very clear that the governance model needs to be clear. And for us, it's very important that we understand what the governance model is and who the governance model thereafter is. We would envisage to be reporting to a trust, a company, whatever is defined by us, to help them optimize the port in the interim period until we can take it to such a stage that we can assist to tender to give it to the international community.
Lorient Le Jour, please.
Hello, my name is Magali Aboud. I'm a journalist at Lorient Le Jour. Oh. Okay, I'm Magali Aboud. I'm a journalist for Lorient Le Jour. I have a question specifically about the financing of this project. As I understood, it will be financed from many international organizations at first, like World Bank or European International Bank. But like, for how much can we have? Can the port have for this financial, this first step, and then after financed? As I understood, it will be private investors who will invest in some part of the port, like the residential area or many restaurants or pubs. But that means that it will all be financed from outside. Lebanese people won't have anything. They won't be able to invest in this. And that's the first question. Second question, there are also many other enterprises who are interested in this port, like the French CMA CGM. Will it be able to have a cooperation between you and CMA CGM and many other manufacturers? Thank you.
First part, according to the first question, or the first part of the question, there is obviously the need to pre-finance activities like building roads, preparing the sites before we get revenues from the sales of the sites. Yeah, this is a step-by-step procedure, as Ambassador Kindle had mentioned. We see the general interest and the general openness of institutions like the European Investment Bank to go into that business, because this would fit into their business model, the dimensions. And it is like really also quite some amount. It would be like for the first years, like about between 200 and 500 million a year that you need to be pre-financed to build all the roads and the infrastructure before we can, let's say, really hand over the sites to private investors. But that is part of the stepwise procedure, as mentioned before, that once there is, let's say, the openness of the Lebanese government to come into a reform process, and the agreement to the project itself as a complete thing, with the cornerstone of the independent trust managing it, then we would proceed and we would bring in those parties to kind of finance that. You remember my diagram with the arrows? That would take in place. This is not the situation now, but it's a later situation. But we are optimistic to achieve that. But it was very clear, if we don't have the independence of that trust, and we don't have the reforms it won't happen. There will be no private investor to invest here. That will only take off the ground if the preconditions are suitable, transparent, and clear.
Okay, we'll take the last two questions, please.
If I can add to the second part of the question. To the second part of the question, CGM are a good example of a major terminal operator. They would be a replacement for BCTC, for example, if they were to tender. We believe that these are the companies that down the line would be looking to tender for that a portion of the port or more portions. We have several terminals. They are clients of ours in other terminals. We work together. We work on behalf of them. We have several other interested parties that are interested in the different portions of the terminal. These are the operators that will eventually take over the operation on concession basis over a period of time. Normally, we would look at a concession to be 15 to 25 years as a manager for them to manage it. Again, we would simply facilitate that, create the framework for it, and facilitate that. CGM would potentially be an operator down the line, but there are other parties interested as well.
Adding to it, I think 2 or 3 months back, we called them and invited them to participate. So we are in a close contact.
My question is, hi, I'm Sunniva Rose from the National. Maybe it's best for the ambassador to answer me. I was wondering if you've been contacted at all with Lebanese officials, and if yes, which ones from the current government, or maybe the Prime Minister designate and the President own? And have you had any feedback from them? What do they think of this?
I hope I understood the question properly. We had talks this week, and I think most, if not all of them, have been made public. We've seen the Prime Minister, we've seen the Transport Minister. Yes, we've had discussions with and presented this study to them, and made it there, just as here, very clear what the components of this study are and what the conditions are that this study can be further followed up with a deeper study and an implementation, namely reforms that need to be done, and that we need a proper government to do these reforms and take up the necessary reforms swiftly in order to allow that reconstruction financing can come from international institutions and the international community. We have not told them anything else as we have done here. In fact, the presentation we did was shorter, I think, than here. And the discussions were open. And of course, as you know, this is a caretaker government. There cannot be any decisions being done. But I think the proposal, the study, in its comprehensiveness, has raised quite an attention with them. Thank you.
Abby Sewell, Lorient Today, the English side of Lorient Le Jour. Could you just specify which companies are involved in this proposal? So we have here the Hamburg Port Consulting and Colliers. Can you tell us what are all of the companies involved?
Repeat the question.
Yeah.
I didn't.
So I was just asking, we have here Hamburg Port Consulting and Colliers. Can you tell us what are all of the companies involved in this proposal?
Yeah, there was only involved Fraunhofer Institute, and there is, let's say, like a major overview over all the general strategic alternatives that had been done by Roland Berger. And what you have seen here is a selection out of, let's say, I think 5 or 4 major alternatives for the port. And what you see here is the alternative 2B. And that was done by Roland Berger. And additional, there was Fraunhofer Gesellschaft. And that was it.
Good day. My name is Luay Shaban from Rabban Safina magazine. My main question is what's next? So we've enjoyed listening and it's very important, but what's next? I believe you, thank you for your visit for Lebanon and for our experience that you provide. Tomorrow maybe you are leaving. As we Lebanese citizens, what do we expect? Are you waiting something from us? Are you waiting for the new government to be established? That's a new issue. That's a headache issue for us as well. My main also that you have related that to transparency, and I think that it's very important. But we have been also suffering with that as well. My second question for the HPC mainly in the sector that you talked about the port, the new plan for the port. Is there a main duration that we expect it will start and it will take like that duration? Thank you and have a safe flight. Thank you.
Yeah, let me start with the first question. It's a very good one. How does that continue? I think everything is there. If you feel that's the right concept and it's for you, want to go to. The only thing that is lacking now is the governance and the transparency. Now, what we want to do is really make it concrete. How does transparency and how does a proper governance look like? Yeah, that is a very abstract term and everybody agrees to that. But now I think we have to go further in detail, which may potentially also fulfill the requirements of the international community to then regain trust that we have now a level of governance which facilitates the funding of the entire project. So for me, the next step is, yeah, of course, on the Lebanese side, there needs to be created transparency, and we would basically assist of how we envisage how it could look like in order to make this project fly.
Any more questions? Okay, أنا بدي أتشكر حضوركم. Thank you, Dr. Alia, also for listening to us.
Thank you for your presence.
Thank you to all.